And hi,
Yes.
and welcome to episode. Sorry, that was a really wonky intro. I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to commit or not, but hey, we did it. So this is episode then 8 of the Miskatonic AV Club, which is a Mythos Busters production, and still with me is myself, of course. I'm Sean, and we've got Scott as well. Hi, Scott.
Hi. You
I'm so
still
glad
have
you.
your wits about you, though,
That's
right?
it.
Like
Well,
that's
I
still
mean,
there.
it's late. I'm like 3 beers in. Wits is a relative term,
Yeah. Well,
but I'll
sweet.
tell you what. Nothing sobers me up faster. Nothing gets me more focused and excited than talking about cards that are covered in purple.
The trash class.
Oh, quiet.
Ooh.
You were an adherent until very recently. You heretic.
Yeah.
You apostate.
Kind of still am. Yeah. We'll see.
All right, so we're talking Mystics of the Dunwich Legacy. So yeah, we got Jim
Yeah.
Culver, who is the musician. He is a performer traded as well. He's got 4 willpower, 3 intellect, 3 combat, 2 agility. Treat the modifier on skull tokens you reveal as a 0. Anytime you reveal an elder sign token, that's the article that
Ooh.
one needs. You may choose to treat it as a skull token. And his elder sign effect is simply +1. And as a point of interest, he also has 7 health and 8 sanity.
Mhm.
His deck is 30 cards, can contain Mystic cards 0 to 5, neutral cards 0 to 5, and he's got the Dunwich special 5 level 0 splash from any other class. And of course, you have to include his trumpet, his final rhapsody, and 1 random basic weakness. So, I was gonna. There's a. I really should have thought ahead on this one. There's a song that
Mhm.
was performed by one Lou Bega, the Mambo King of the 2000s, that has an
Mambo number
awesome.
5.
No, it has an awesome trumpet intro, and I have it on cue on my phone whenever Jim's on the table, and whenever he does something cool, I play that song. So I'm gonna find that song
Mhm.
while you read Jim's trumpet.
All right. Funny you should mention the song because for some reason I always picture him playing a mariachi trumpet. I don't know. Anyways, Jim's trumpet, The Dead Listen. It is an asset, goes in the hand slot. It's an item, instrument, and relic. It's 2 cost, and it has 2 willpower pips and a wild pip. Jim Culver's deck only. And then reaction when a skull token is revealed during a skill test, exhaust Jim's trumpet. Heal 1 horror from an investigator at your location or a connecting location. And
I didn't find it in
I guess
time,
I'll
so
read.
play as Rhapsody.
Okay. Well, Final Rhapsody is a treachery and a weakness, and it has the trait N times. And maybe one of my favorite arts of all the weaknesses. But
It's
anyways,
so funny.
oh, it's great. It makes me okay. I was like, Revelation reveal 5 chaos tokens from the chaos bag for each skull and tentacle token revealed. Take 1 damage and 1 horror, and that's 5 at a time. It's not one and then put it back, one put it
Yes,
back.
without
So
replacement. So your
it
chances
makes
for
me think of
getting
the.
skulls and tentacle are much
Mhm,
greater. How much
yeah,
greater? I don't know. You'll have to talk to someone who likes math.
yeah. Um, it makes me think. The art makes me think of the Princess Bride when they fall in those like quicksand
Oh
pits in
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
forest.
And
Yeah, I
they
don't know.
tangle with the ROUSs,
Yes.
rodents of unusual size.
Oh yes, yes. Yeah. It's been a while since I watched that, but that's what I think of, anyways. Um, yeah, he's an interesting character, this Jim.
Yeah. There's such a deep subtlety to Jim
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
in in what he brings to the table. I think I was pretty, I don't say dubious or ambivalent about him when he was spoiled, because
Hmm.
it's kind of hard to I don't know. To me, I don't like building decks or building characters in RPGs or whatever it happens to be, depending on someone else doing something,
Hmm.
right? So his
Hmm.
ability depends on the chaos bag producing the proper token.
Yeah.
Kind of. It gets more complicated than that. But on its face, treating a modifier as a 0 on the skull token, it basically just makes the chaos bag less frightening for Jim. Essentially, he's just his
Yeah.
stats are overall slightly higher because he's got more zeros in the bag than anyone else.
Which, I mean, you can't run past that too quickly. Like that. That is
Yeah,
actually
that's a thing.
significant. Like that's a really strong power. I mean, taking his trumpet completely out of the equation, like that's just good. Like it's like a +1 to sometimes things that you don't need to pay for. Yeah, it's really good.
Now, my problem with Jim
Hmm.
is that Jim without trumpet versus Jim with trumpet is such a large, intense difference.
Yeah.
With trumpet, dude's amazing. You can pack in like you can almost build his deck if you assume you're gonna get his trumpet out reliably, which I don't think you can yet because we don't really have anything to go fetch it.
Hmm.
But if you could presumably get his trumpet out regularly, and you're playing
Yeah.
multiplayer where more skulls are potentially going to be revealed, and also keep in mind that even though Jim's ability only triggers off skulls you reveal, his trumpet triggers off any skull that's revealed.
Yeah.
Anyway, when you're in that situation, you can almost build his deck like Agnes, where you just go overload on the cool things you can do by giving yourself horror for some other benefit, and then just
Hmm.
heal the horror off. It just sloughs off you. Oh, I found that song by the way. It would have been much cooler. So I'm gonna do it as the sign off song when we're done with
Okay.
when we're done with Jim. Yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and the fact that it takes a hand slot isn't
That's
super bad in Jim. Like because he's gonna probably be using like probably have a ritual candles out. We'll get into that later. But his weapons, if you will,
hmm
uh, it's gonna be shriveling,
right.
right?
Yeah. Presumably he's
Um,
a mystic. His best
yeah.
options. I mean, he can splash in level 0 cards, but presumably his best options are going to be spells for dealing damage. I did
Um,
try a kind of actual combat deck build for Jim. So since he starts at 3, I mean that's not terrible. I figured maybe I'd use his splash to enhance his fight ability to kind of, diversify again, like we were talking about in the Guardian one. So
mhm,
I splashed machete, but I still included shriveling, so he just had more opportunities to hit that card that he wants to deal with enemies. And it worked all
mhm.
right. I do like the fact
Yeah.
that he's really well rounded, and that again his ability just kind of makes all his stats kind of higher in a way.
Yeah, I mean, Moon E513 in chat, uh, he mentions like it's not really something you can build around per se,
Exactly.
his ability. It's just good, you know. And
Right.
you know what though? I kind of like that, right? Because if Agnes is not a, diss on your girl, um, like she does, her ability does one thing, right? But if that ability doesn't get a chance to trigger, then you're not really getting the advantage of playing Agnes. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
Whereas,
aside from just playing Agnes, but yeah,
well, yeah,
I see where you're coming from, even if I don't agree with you.
yeah, um, yeah, and like something like skids, right? It's like, well, you have to have two resources to pay for an extra action. That's kind of a specific thing you can do, but James just happens. It just makes numbers better. It's like rolling a 20-sided die with two 20s, you know? Yeah.
hmm
So,
Yeah. Um. Yeah, and that's the thing is like it is cool because, like you said, it's not really one you have to build around. So I think as the game extends, Agnes will probably have kind of a best build because at a
mhm,
certain point she'll just hit a a critical mass of the most efficient cards that work
yeah.
well with her ability. But since you don't really build around Jim, mean, you can kind of build around his trumpet, assuming it's going to come out, but at the same time, it's a one of, so there will be games where it doesn't. So you may not want to build that way, but it's gonna increase the variety of builds that he can have because the building for Jim kind of takes place more with which way you decide to take it because you can take it so many
Yeah.
different ways.
hmm I'm currently using Jim in Aim for Dunwich that my wife and I are playing together, and she's using Jenny, and they're a really good pair,
Mm-hmm.
actually.
Yeah, they're both super well rounded.
Yeah, and that's one thing about those stats. Like evade, I find, or sorry, agility. I only use it on a very select few investigators. Most investigators, I find myself not using that stat for actually evading.
Sure.
Um, and I feel like Jim is one of those. I'm like, I'm just gonna kill the thing
Right, and
whenever I have to evade.
he's in a position to do that. So
Yeah, and so I like that the his agility stat is the low one, and it's a 2, and we get a better spread. So, and his weakness,
yeah,
it
let's
isn't
talk
that
about
bad.
Final Rhapsody.
Well,
It's
it can be very bad, but it can also completely whiff, or it can do a damage and a horror. Like
mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it's another. I don't want to say easy one, but
I
it's not horrible.
we're not playing bold but true right now, but I would
Yeah.
I would posit that Jim's weakness is the easiest weakness in the game right now, which just further deepens the subtlety of
Ooh.
Jim because not only are you kind of getting his well-rounded stats and his evening out of the chaos bag, but then you're also evening out your deck because, when you draw a weakness, it can not be much and it can really suck. But I feel like
Mhm.
this one has far less swingy because I've seen it happen where you reveal all the three possibles right now in the chaos bags that we play with, but
Yep.
that is not going to be the norm. I would love to know what the odds are on that. It's not
Yeah.
great.
I.
I think most of the time
I.
this is going to be one damage, one horror, and occasionally it'll be two damage and two horror, and also occasionally it'll be nothing, which
Yeah.
not too many other weaknesses can say. So
I was playing. Believe it was Carnival. Does Carnival have the 3 skulls in it? I'm pretty sure the
in
standalone.
standalone, oh, I don't know. I've not played any of the print on demands. No, wait, that's a lie. I've played Ruguru standalone. I've not played Carnival.
Oh man, they're awesome standalone. Anyways, we were losing this game anyways, and I drew Final Rhapsody, and I drew four 3 skulls and a tentacle, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, and I just died. Um, yeah, that was not fun. But I've also drawn this a number of times and like drawn one. It's really not bad. Easiest, I don't know. It's darn close though.
Yeah, yeah. So I think one of the other things to talk about that maybe it wasn't as apparent when we first saw Jim, and then we kind of saw where it was headed, and now it's actually heading there. Is there's kind
Hmm.
of a thread right now in Mystic cards of I suppose we had it in the core too. We just didn't really get the actual use of it. But there's a thread of manipulating chaos tokens, and
hmm
if you pull certain tokens, certain things happen. So particularly what we've been seeing is if you pull skull tokens for certain effects, the trumpet, um, song song for the dead, song of the dead that comes out in a later pack.
Song of the Dead. Yeah.
Anyway, that one wants you to pull skulls. Jim wants you to pull skulls, so I would say one of the best includes in a Jim deck as soon as you can afford it. What his other hand slot should be holding, aside from his trumpet, is a grotesque statue. I feel like
Absolutely.
if you're kind of counting on Jim to play the probabilities and use his well-rounded stats to just kind of win out in the end, then it's just another level of manipulating that. And it's just a good
hmm
card anyway, so
It is a really good card. I think anyone who can upgrade to it should.
yeah.
It makes your skill test more reliable when you really when you need that critical hit or you need to get that last clue. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep,
Um,
yep.
I just have to point out too, if you are playing Carnival and you draw his Final Rhapsody, Mr. My Penguins Are Lulls in the chat says you can also use the Elder Sign as a skull, so you could get 4 skulls and a tentacle to do 5 damage just
All right.
for the
Just
lulls. But
just so we know.
just if anyone wants to try that. You go right ahead. All
So,
right.
hang on. Oh man, Spotify's lagging. Oh.
Sean, this is horrible radio.
Well, you just can't hear it. I started the song a little while ago. So we're probably gonna get blanked for that. So we'll see how it goes. But any closing thoughts on Jim?
Better in multiplayer, I think.
Yet again, it's a theme.
Oh, it's almost like they want you to have friends. But you know what? A completely usable solo too. And I think he's just an all-around good character in a good faction that has a lot of options for building, and is only going to get better. So I find him very interesting. I don't know if we, and I say we as like the collectible Arkham community, have quite figured him out yet, but I think he's going to be a beast once we do.
Yeah, and I like the thread he's pushing us down. I love the idea that the Mystic class is kind of getting these tools to manipulate even the encounter or the chaos bag and actually benefit. Again, I love effects that turn a negative into a positive, and here we go. Our second Mystic out of the gate. Agnes leading the way, and Jim comes up right behind her, and here we go. Another negative turning into a positive, and we're only getting more options for that effect, so yeah. It'll be really cool. What I want to see, and I don't know if this is possible or good for the game, or if it would break it in any way, but I would love to see some kind of a spell that's fast, and when you pull a chaos token, you can like seal that token and attach it to this spell, and then at some point use that token for a specific test. Obviously at some cost. That's a really powerful effect, so there'd have to be some crazy cost. Like you'd probably have to take horror as you maintain it. But anyway, that kind of effect I think would be really cool to this kind of thread that we're getting.
Yeah, that would be cool.
All right.
It's an interesting design, Sean. You should mention it to somebody at FFG.
Oh, dude, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. I bug those guys so often.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm kidding.
Sure no one goes to FFG and tells them how good of an idea they have for a game that they should make.
Yeah, well, I mean, they like openly say no solicitations. So I imagine someone's doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jim, he's cool. Yeah, I am definitely more positive on him than I was when I first saw him. I like the subtlety of him. Yeah.
Well, we got a number of Mystic cards here.
I'm not sure where you can find it, Scott.
What?
I'm not sure where you. Yeah, should we do something? Should we call in a seance? Perhaps do a Rite of Seeking.
No, they're just right on the screen. If you just look below.
There it is.
We don't have to do any magic at all. Yeah.
Damn.
I was gonna say if you want to read Rite of Seeking, it actually helps Agnes be a team player. So.
Oh, hey, you know as well as I do that Agnes had tools before this, but this don't hurt.
It doesn't.
So Rite of Seeking, don't correct my grammar, is a 4-cost level 0 asset. It has 1 intellect icon. It is a spell and uses 3 charge. Have we, like, when we talk to Matt and Nate again, it probably will be at some point at Gen Con. Remind me, even though you may or may not be there, remind me to ask whether it is uses or uses. Because both make sense, and I cannot figure out which it is. Anyway, sorry guys. Rite of Seeking uses 3 charges and has action. Spend 1 charge, investigate. Investigate using willpower instead of intellect. If you succeed, discover 1 additional clue at this location. If a skull, cultist, tablet, elder thing, or tentacle symbol is revealed during this test, after this test resolves, lose all remaining actions and immediately end your turn. Apparently you didn't like what you saw.
High risk, high reward much. Hey?
I honestly don't even think there's much risk to this card. You just got to play it right.
Yeah, you always investigate as the last act.
Yeah, last
action.
or
And it's like,
second
oh
to
hey.
last,
Mm-hmm.
depending on your need. Um,
Because I mean, you may still pass with a skull token or a cultist token, but then you get the two clues, but then your turn ends. So, eesh.
yeah.
Well, you've probably played the most with it. I included a copy in my gym deck.
hmm
Um, but what's your take on Rite of Seeking? Is it a auto two of in Agnes?
I think it is in solo Agnes
Mm-hmm.
because I think between this Lucky and look what I found. That's a decent kit for grabbing a lot of clues.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually started this. This has taken the place of flashlight in my Agnes decks. I don't use flashlight anymore. Um, but yeah, so here's the thing, and we've talked about this on the podcast proper a little bit, but it's great that you can discover an additional clue.
Mm-hmm.
But doing so is a marginal benefit depending on your situation. In solo, this card's not as good because
Very true.
there are far fewer locations that have more than one clue, and therefore the
Mm-hmm.
value in this just inherently goes down.
Mm-hmm.
That said, Mystics right now are kind of reliant on their, for the most part, their skill replacement abilities. So much like Shriveling, this one lets you use presumably your best stat to investigate. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, I'm pretty positive on it. I don't think it goes in every deck. It's not like this is just like a blanket seeker card or God mystic card. I did that last time. It's not a blanket mystic card. I don't think. But I think all the mystics we have right now probably take it. I mean, it's a spell. There's that.
How many times? How many times have you investigated first action and drawn the tentacle and just flipped the table?
Well,
Has it happened yet?
it has happened. I
Oh,
think most of the time, if you're just disciplined and try to remember that, hey, don't invest if I can help it, investigate last action. If I have to, investigate
mhm.
second to last action. But I mean, there have been a couple situations where it's like, okay, all I need to do is get this last clue, and then I can GTFO. So of
Yeah.
course I'm not going to wait till last action to do it, even though I probably should have. And yeah, I've had a situation where I investigate first action and then pull something, and it's just like, oh. That being
I'm gonna do
said,
this, and my turn's done.
yeah, it is gone.
Yeah. I think
But
we're
yeah,
thinking of the same South Park meme. And it's done.
but yeah, I think
Um.
this is pretty easy to play around. I think as long as you're disciplined and you try to investigate last action, most of the time, even if you're trying to hoover up clues, getting two with one action is pretty okay, and you're okay not.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't think it's as big a detriment. Now, what is the four costs.
Yeah.
That's a hit, and that is often a thing that it's like, oh god, tempo wise, sometimes it's just really hard to get it down.
Yeah. Because if you want to, I mean, usually my plan of action with any investigator is to get some sort of defense down, where like with Agnes or Jim, would be okay. I need to get a shriveling or some sort of something I can defend myself with first turn,
Mm-hmm.
and in order to play, and probably some other tool card, like something else down. But to play Rite of Seeking and shriveling on your starting turn, you'd also have to have like an emergency cache.
Mm-hmm.
Um, four is big.
It's a
That's a
thing.
lot of your starting resources. It's 80% of your starting resources.
It
That
sure
like
is.
it's
And mystics aren't the richest class to begin with. I tend to try to
mhm.
make my decks lean and mean when I can, but sometimes I don't know. It's almost always worth it, but I think there are moments where the pace slows it down, and there's just not. You wish you could play it sooner than you can.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I
I
think
mean,
that
you
that's a
could
priority
play.
for me. Is I need something on the board as quickly as possible so that I don't get caught flat-footed by an enemy. And then this
Yeah.
comes
You
second.
could
And when you come second and you cost 4, sometimes you just don't come down.
you could play Forbidden Knowledge in Gym
hmm
as well because he's going to be healing that horror
You hope.
if he get his trumpet out. Yeah.
You hope. God,
Yeah. I can't wait for just like a.
if there was a reliable way to get that damn trumpet out, Jim would go like from a B to a straight A for me.
Yeah.
Anyway,
A minus, A
A
minus.
minus.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'll buy A minus until he gets more
yeah,
cool effects for his kit. But yeah,
yeah.
I like Rite of Seeking. It again. Now that I think I started that whole tangent with saying okay in solo. Now in multiplayer, when
Mhm.
clues are just stacked everywhere, um, yeah, this is even better in that case because you can, God, especially with mystics, you can really hit some high shroud locations and be okay with this.
Yeah, just Clover them up.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, play it in general.
Oh,
It's a spell. It's good. Helps you get clues. Helps you get clues.
it's
Yeah.
getting pretty late.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit dark. I might need to light some candles to keep working
Oh
through
man,
the
we're,
night.
we're reaching so hard.
Oh, these are so
So
bad.
get them candles.
Okay. The I will get my ritual candles, which happen to be an asset that I'm going to hold in one of my hands. They're items. They cost one, level 0. Uh, they have a willpower pip and a reaction after a skull, cultist, tablet, or elder thingy symbol is revealed during a test you are performing. You get +1 skill value for that test. So there's that chaos bag manipulation again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I actually really like ritual candles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think mystics are mostly gonna have be doing the spell thing, like the mind bullets and the, looking into passages with their rites and all this thing. So usually their hands are free. Um, why not put in something that's just gonna make bad tablets or bad tokens a little less bad? So maybe you'll pass a few more tests. And for one cost, I mean, the cost I think really is that it costs a hand slot. But in the Mystic class, that's not as big a cost. So,
Mm-hmm. And coincidentally, Mind Bullets was the name of my punk rock protest band in high school.
hmm, that's what my friend calls shriveling. Mind bullets.
Mind Bullets. Yeah, so basically when I plop this on the table, I just look at the scenario card that shows you what the special tokens do, and I go, +1 to that, +1 to that, +1 to that. So essentially, yeah, I mean, this is just kind of like a +1 to every skill, something like 25 to 30% of the time, depending on your chaos bag,
Yeah.
which for one cost and a hand slot is not bad.
Mhm.
I go 2 of in Jim, and I've been going 1 of in Agnes.
Yeah, I think just Jim's basic style. I think you want two, so you see one. You know, like not necessarily saying you want both of his hands filled with candles, because obviously you got to play that trumpet. Um, but yeah, just the style of Jim being the guy who, the chaos bag isn't that chaosy. Um, that's his special power, and the ritual candles help with that. Um, I agree, and Agnes, you're using a lot of willpower. Like it's kind of like rite of seeking and shriveling and find monster and all these things. Saying use your willpower instead of whatever other stat.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when is her willpower not 6 or higher?
Not very
Right?
often.
You're usually playing a rosary. If you have upgraded big man on campus there,
Mm-hmm.
do you really need the +1 from the candles as much as, say, Jim? I don't think you do,
Agree.
but
Agree. Because
a good card.
basically, I mean, for Jim, this turns his skulls into +1s. So now
Yeah,
Jim on standard has 3 +1s in the bag, which is kind of okay.
yeah, because it doesn't add one to the modifier. You get
Mm-hmm.
+1 skill value because
Mm-hmm.
his power turns the skull to a 0, and then this gives you just +1 because you drew a skull. So this can actually, I mean, if you're taking a lot of even tests later on in a quest when it gets super difficult, this can probably save your bacon. Not that I suggest doing even tests, but
No, that was a
yeah.
meme I was gonna make. with the even test. You know that scene
No.
in Thor 2 where Loki's like, "Oh, you must truly be desperate." You go, "Oh,
Uh,
doing a test
no, actually.
at even, you must truly be desperate." Anyway,
Oh,
yeah, I like
okay.
the candles. They're good. They
Yeah.
again, they're just kind of that subtlety that Jim brings to the table. Because I mean,
Hmm.
they're kind of unassuming when you compare them to other assets that are doing. There's nothing that's doing similar things. I shouldn't say that, but they're kind of unassuming compared to other assets. But
Yeah.
I
They're
think when
not
you
flashy.
exactly there it is. They're not very sexy, even though you know movies have taught me my entire life that that's not the case. If you want to be sexy, you light candles.
Hmm.
But
One
they
thing
get
I
the job
will
done.
say, one thing I'll say too, and it helps every test. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like it's not like it's a crappy knife and it's adding to your fight or something. Like it helps everything. It's not a magnifying glass. It's everything. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one other thing I like about it. It's just it's a knife. It's a magnifying glass. It's a whole bunch of things.
Yep.
30% of the time.
Yep.
So
All right. Well, you know what? That really, really cleared my thoughts, and I feel like I'm having
oh my
a
god.
bit of an epiphany right now.
Hmm.
So it's oh so apropos that our next card happens to be Clarity of Mind, which is a 2-cost asset, level 0, has 1 willpower pip. It is a spell and uses 3 charges. Action: spend 1 charge. Heal 1 horror from an investigator at your location. From the unreal, lead me to the real. From the darkness, lead me to the light. From the dead, lead me to the immortal.
I like that there's not a test involved.
That is nice.
Um,
Um, see,
you go ahead. This is
I'm
your class, so you.
yeah. This is my class, and this has not made it into a deck I've made yet. Few reasons. I think Jim doesn't particularly need it because he's either got his
Hmm.
trumpet, and because of the unreliability of his trumpet, you're probably not loading him up with things that would be giving him horror.
Hmm.
Um, Agnes probably doesn't need it, although, maybe down the line there might be a use for it. It's the action that kills me. Like
Yeah.
if this was, free triggered action and exhaust or something like that, completely different story. But
Yeah.
I think it's the opportunity cost of the action that stops me up on this. It's just like with first aid, except this is even more limited. It is a spell, which is nice. I don't know. I don't know. I don't see it being
But
yeah.
it also takes up an arcane slot too.
There's that.
Like if you want your shriveling and your rite of seeking, your mind isn't very clear. Um,
There I
yeah,
I don't know where this belongs in the mystics that we have now. I
yeah,
mean, I suppose there is some application in a big 4-player game, maybe at the end of the campaign when everyone's, toting around like 3 mental trauma. Maybe
yeah.
this does become a crucial piece.
And you're just milling, or you're mulliganing hard for
You're
clarity of
just
mind.
well done, universe. You got me again.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now, I think the fact that it's a spell is the best thing I can say about it. And,
Hmm.
as much as I love Agnes's signature, you can't rely on it. It's a one of. It's kind of spendy. I end up chucking Agnes's signature for icons as often as it hits the table, so I don't know. The fact that it's a spell is okay. It's not
Yeah.
enough to make me include it in a deck.
Yeah. I mean, and if you think of the cost to get it out as well, I mean, not just the 2 costs, but an action to put it out and then an action to heal a horror. So you spent
Yes.
2 actions and healed a horror.
That's just it,
Like,
man. Yeah,
yeah,
that's I mean
the
you laid it
tempo
out.
hit you take for
You
this.
you laid it out. That's I mean when I evaluate cards, I'm always like I would love to be able to live in the world where everything's going well and I can have a best case scenario all the time, but most of the time when I'm evaluating cards, I'm like, "All right, I've got an enemy engaged with me. I'm up against the wall and I draw this. Am I happy?"
Yeah.
And the
Hey, you got a
answer is
pip
a,
for
a
shriveling.
very very stiff no.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, but that said, I don't know. There might be a case down the line when mystics get more spells and they get more do horror abilities. Um, maybe free actions to
Yeah.
spend on spells, maybe trigger an action on. I don't know. There are things that could make this attractive, but I just don't think mystics need it right now. We have fearless. Fearless is just so much better than this card, I think.
So let me ask you this then. What do you think of this card in someone like Zoe or another investigator who has a low amount of sanity?
Sure.
Um, and they're not going to be using, let's say you have a build where your arcane slots pretty much sit empty.
Mm-hmm.
Do you toss one of these in there just because nothing's going to compete for it? It gives you a little bit extra room on the sanity side? Or would you just rather play something like Rosary?
If we're assuming I mean, are we assuming access to any other pools? Because I think I saw Mr. Trench in the chat mention it, but Liquid Courage that comes out of Rogue is just intensely better than this card.
Just better. Yeah. I mean, you have to do the drunk test,
That's true.
but
But your Mystics are really good at staying sober, it turns out.
yeah. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I like that this exists. It might
mhm,
find a slot in the future if horror is really a thing that a specific investigator is concerned with. Like, say there's, I don't know, say there's an investigator in the future that takes horror as part of their ability, as opposed to Agnes that reacts to taking horror from something else.
mhm.
Then I don't know. Maybe this finds a slot, but not a fan at the moment. It's the tempo hit, man.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
this
I
was
agree.
everything as it is, except it was a free triggered action and an exhaust instead of an action, like I'm on board, but maybe that's too
Mhm.
powerful.
Yeah. Hmm, all right. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan. I think there's better options for pretty much every class or everyone who can splash something,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
But yeah.
Well, we seemed pretty up in the air on that one. Maybe I can tie you down to a specific opinion on
Oh
this
my
next one.
god. Oh, they just oh wow. So there's Bind Monster. It's a mystic event. It's a spell. It costs 2 XP, or level 2. It's got 2 pips. One is willpower and one is intellect. It says evade. This evasion attempt uses willpower instead of agility. If you succeed, the enemy is non-elite. Evade it and attach Bind Monster to it. And then reaction: when attached enemy ready, test 3 willpower. If you succeed, attached enemy is not ready. If you fail, discard Bind Monster.
Yeah,
I
no, sorry, you go
you go
first.
first. No.
um, I really love the design of this card.
Yes.
Everything about it is just awesome. The art is awesome. The idea of it is awesome. Just like the idea of just holding this monster in like the mind armor bubble thing. I don't know.
Mind Bind.
There you go. It's all really cool. That said, um, it hasn't found its way into a lot of decks.
3 cost is a lot
3 cost is a lot.
for a single use testable test. You know what I mean? Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
like an action like clarity of mind where you just do something, right? There's a test involved, so you might fail,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a lot more tests down the road.
I think
That
this is yeah. God, I'm really tough on this one because I really like it, but I'm not sure
yeah,
how I actually feel about it.
when I first saw
Which
it,
is a really weird sentence to say, but I'm sure you all know
yeah,
what I mean.
when I first saw it, I thought like, wow, this is an incredibly powerful card, and for the same reason, right? Like it seems so powerful. It's like I'm holding this guy down with my mind. It feels great to play this card, but I've used it a couple times in playing like standalone, where you get the 9 XP to level up your deck.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, well, I'll throw some bind monsters in there to try them. And like every single time I drew one, I'm just like, I don't have 3 resources
Mm-hmm.
to waste on a maybe good evade. Like, yeah, I don't know. Why
I
don't I just
think,
kill the guy?
yeah, that's the thing. Is I think this will become really good down the road of when we start getting more mystics that aren't as competent as combat at combat. Like Agnes is a wrecking ball,
Yes.
and Jim can hold his own. So I feel like with that
Hmm.
2 experience, you're almost always going to take level 2 blinding light over this with those 2 investigators because just pouring in more damage. Because that's the thing is like since there's no actual defending in this game, it's almost like the best defense is
Hmm.
just a good offense. Like you can evade it and hold it and thrall as kind of a defensive move, sure, or you could just kill it.
Yeah. You can be all fancy and you can dance around, or you can just stab it in the face with a mind bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that said, there are specific enemies that I think this works pretty well with. Anything that's hunting, it's really cool to lock down.
Hmm.
Non-elite hurts this, but the other thing I wanted to point out is you'll notice that that test is a reaction, which means it is an optional trigger. So what you can do with this is you can evade the monster, get this on there. You can decide not to trigger that reaction. You can let it ready, and then if it's evaded or otherwise exhausted somewhere else down the line and it would ready again, or if it attacks something and exhausts to attack and then readies again, you can then trigger this to keep it exhausted. So you can like almost let it like get to your location and then
Hmm.
reactivate the bind. That's something I didn't catch right away when and even probably the first couple times I
Yeah.
played with this, I didn't catch that that was an optional trigger, and you can kind of get a little tricky with your timing. So I think that's definitely a plus in its column.
Albeit, I think a small plus.
Very, very.
Not to be harsh on it.
No, that's fair. It's situationally awesome.
But I mean, I think that goes back to your last point too, where you're saying, I can dipsy doodle and do all this stuff, or I could just kill it. And it's like, oh, do I want him to stand up and then kind of come towards me, but then I'm gonna bind him again, and then it's like, why don't you just kill him, and then you don't have to worry about timing.
Yeah,
Um,
I,
cool card though. Like, don't
I,
get me wrong,
yeah, and
feels fantastic.
I think maybe one of the first investigators where this looks significantly more attractive than Jim and Agnes is we've obviously been spoiled with Marie Lambeau from the promo that was sent out with the Investigators of Arkham book, and she is super bad at
Hmm.
combat. Obviously, she still has access to all the high levels or the damaging spells, so there's still that same argument to be made. But this is another solution. And the other
Hmm.
thing is this targets the enemy's evade value instead of their fight. So if you got something with like astronomically high fight, this might look like
Yeah.
a more attractive option in a lot of cases. The problem is,
Yeah.
again, non-elite.
Yeah. I
So
mean, there's a lot of enemies that aren't elite, but all the important ones
right, that's the
are
thing
elite,
is like all
and
the
I
ones that you'd like to get tricky with are the ones you can't get tricky with.
yeah.
Getting tricky with it.
Hmm. I really want to like this card more. I don't think it's a bad card. I don't think it's a great card.
And it's definitely
I
fun
think
though.
it's
I think it's another one
it
that's
is
just
super fun.
yeah.
It feels like you're actually fighting a monster. You know, like it evokes that feeling of like, yeah, testing
hmm
more willpower to keep you locked in the mind vault. And
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
so
And especially in Agnes, where like you said, you're generally sitting at 6 willpower naked. So it's
yeah.
not that big a thing to keep the monster locked down. So, if you're in a position to do it, I guess why not?
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
cool card, if nothing else. Nothing else can be
Yeah.
said about it. It's just an awesome design. All right. Well, sadly.
Quite a varied offering for the Mystic class as far
Agreed.
as cards go.
Yeah, it's not quite as
Yeah,
focused as the Guardians were
yeah,
in the Dunwich Legacy. Yeah, although I do still think it hints largely toward multiplayer. Jim, as we mentioned, especially with his trumpet, does that. Rite of Seeking with the multiple clue grabbing does that.
for sure.
Clarity of Mind, there's an argument that it's more useful if you can heal from other people too. But
Hmm.
then Rituals is just an all around good card.
Yeah, if you like math, Rituals is good.
How many times have you forgotten to add the +1
Um,
to only find out that it didn't matter?
I don't think I've actually forgotten too many times because whenever I have it out, like I'm one of those people I like triple check when I'm committing to a test. I'm like, okay, the test this, I have this, I'm adding this many PMs, blah blah, and I have these bonuses. And I'm like, okay, one more time. So yeah.
Oh man,
But there
diligent.
are a number of times where it's like, yeah, bonus +1, but it doesn't matter because I passed anyway. So
Yeah. And I do think the star of the pack is Rite of Seeking, because like Mr. Trench just pointed out, I mean, out of the core, the Agnes had the most trouble with investigating. She had access to the survivor cards and flashlight, but still there were moments where it just hurt. And oh man, Rite of Seeking so solves that problem.
yeah.
I recently took my first Agnes deck through Dunwich that we have so far. Believe it or not, I do play other investigators. This is the first time I actually took Agnes solo through Dunwich as we have it so far, and that deck's just super good. Yeah, Agnes is just so good, guys.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You know how some people who go to like lots of rock concerts get like hearing damage? You're gonna have like gator damage because you're just constantly playing at 11 with Agnes, and you're gonna come play some other gator and be like, I guess they're okay.
I'm
When
gonna
the
have
rest of us are like, oh, this is really good.
investigate-tinnitus.
Oh wow,
Oh, guys, it's
that
late.
was
Forgive
good.
me. Forgive me.
Oh boy.
All right. Well, I
Uh,
think that wraps it up for the Mystics. Scott, any final thoughts?
no,
They're good. Play
I
them.
think we've sung our song and yeah. I don't know why I think of mariachi trumpet. I saw Ben Folds one day in concert with an orchestra, and he made a song with the orchestra. And he's like, "I need a mariachi trumpet," and the guy started like the trumpet player started playing mariachi because he plays in an orchestra and like is
Well,
amazing.
musicians, professional
Yeah,
musicians, just do shit like that.
and it was ridiculous. He's
Yeah.
like, "Okay, Ben Folds is playing the piano." It's like violins play this chord progression, and trombones play this, and I need a mariachi trumpet, and that sound, just how it pierced through this auditorium,
Hmm.
like it stuck in my head. So that's why, and I hear that specific song in my head when I play Jim and play his trumpet. Anyways,
You should definitely
that's
make
my
sure that Ian gets that song for his gym playlist.
it was no like Ben Folds. They
Oh,
performed the
it's not
song
actually
live, like
recorded.
no, they just made a
Oh.
song up because they're musicians and
Oh,
they're
they improved it.
amazing.
Okay, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Ben Folds tangent aside.
yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So per usual, go check us out if you haven't already. Google, Facebook, YouTube, podcast, Twitter, things, social media. Okay, that's it from us tonight, guys. Thank you for joining us on the Miskatonic AB Club.